Hi, everybody. Welcome to Story Hour. I am your host, Daniel Marcus. My brilliant co-host is Laura Blackwell, and it is Wednesday evening in California, and we are back again, as we are every week, bringing you spectacular spoken word speculative fiction. We like to bring you work from across the entire multiverse of speculative genres. Um, Horror, fantasy, hard SF, space opera, your favorite species of punk, slipstream, weird, grimdark, so on and so on. We welcome new writers for whom the ink is just barely dry on their first few contracts, and award-winning seasoned pros, and everybody in between. I started this thing over 6 years ago, in the early days of the pandemic. Things out there were strange and not at all like now. And I wanted to just create a place where my writer friends and I could get together and share our work and enjoy a little bit of community, kind of shelter in place against what seemed to be uh, uh, the burgeoning apocalypse that we had been reading about and writing about for many years. Very shortly after I kicked it off, I asked my friend and colleague Laura Blackwell to join me in co-hosting, and we have been at it ever since, over 6 years, as I said, which just seems crazy. But week in, week out, we are at it. Things out there are still weird and trending weirder, but we are still here, and we're not going anywhere. I really think that we need stories more than ever right now, and we need community more than ever right now. We need each other. Uh, so this thing, Story Hour, relies on a very ancient tradition, which is people sitting around the fire telling lies. And so we do that every week. We have two writers, tonight three. I'll tell you why in a moment. Uh, about 30 minutes each, narrating their own work. I want to thank the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America for awarding us the SIFWA Givers Grant uh, to basically help pay hosting fees, keep the lights on, and keep these virtual rooms open. Givers Grant are intended to aid projects that align with SIFWA's mission to promote, advance, and support science fiction and fantasy writing around the world. And it's made possible with the generosity of donors from our community and partnerships within the publishing ecosystem. So thank you, SIFWA. And with that, we welcome our authors this evening, Shaenon K. Garrity, and the team of Faye Gabriel and Kat Weaver. And we're going to start the program this evening with Faye Gabriel and Kat Weaver. Faye Gabriel is a bisexual and genderqueer writer, parent, sewist, and barbarian multiclass. It's a great combo. From Baltimore, Maryland. Kat Weaver is a lesbian writer, illustrator, and editor from St. Paul, Minnesota. Faye and Kat met in a wildly absorbing D&D game in 2022 and have been writing together ever since. Their short story, We Gaze Upon Her with No Eyes, appears in the Neon Hemlock anthology, Shatter the Sun, Queer Tales of Untold Adventure, available now at neonhemlock.com. And you can find more of their joint original work for free via their websites, faygabriel.com and kathymmweaver.com. Kat has been published solo in Apex, Lackingtons, and elsewhere. Her novella, Uncommon Charm, co-written with Emily Bergslein, I hope I got that right, was published in 2022 by Neon Hemlock. Faye, Kat, welcome. Take it away.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We gaze upon her with no eyes. The shattered lands awaited me. I knew it even as I awoke, gasping, covered in sweat, her hand crushing the breath from my chest. After years of silence, I'd hoped my goddess had made peace with the quiet life I'd claimed at such cost. But she'd resumed her whispers over the last Sen night, each louder than the next. You live for me. The time has come. I am but her humble servant. Yet I think I am right in saying she could have waited until dawn and let me get a full night's rest. I was about 20 years past my prime, and my knee did not appreciate her urgency. I stretched it and took my time. Wreathed once more in the lucent pallor of the bone armor she had bestowed, the ivory shield on my back, I meant to stand at my shieldmate's bedside and bid them a solemn, silent farewell. But the two of them were awake already. I usually did not wish to be touched. Tonight, they folded me into a last embrace.
Mick kissed my temple gently, and Tor squeezed my hands within his. Should we wake the foundlings? He asked.
The foundlings, as though Belle and Idigere weren't grown, with families of their own now. I shook my head.
Mick gave a soothing touch to my knee. We'll say your goodbyes.
I didn't say goodbye to the two of them either. They knew that what I didn't owe to the goddess, I owed to them, to the two foundlings we'd raised together. It was what I loved about them, that they didn't ask me to say it. I saddled my war horse, as old and as resigned to being woken as I was, and raised my blade in salute as I rode out. The lantern at our cottage's window winked back. We'd once hoped to save more than two foundlings. We'd hoped to make the village our own, a haven, start a school perhaps. If the land hadn't been so ravaged by the war's end, the people not so weary. Well, we had done what we could with the little that we had. I could nearly hear the rattle of her laughter. I'd hesitated long enough.
Always a flaw of yours, she reminded me, a flick of her bony finger upon my ribs from within. She was as eager to leave as I was to stay.
The hills gave way to furrowed plains where summoned creatures had torn open the living rock, where armies of shadows had massed, while our small band had thought first to fight, then only to live. My patron had prodded me to leave my companions behind then, to take what stolen power I had claimed and feed it, to be always more.
And you could have been, she said, gentle and dry as always.
I passed small villages like our own, villages with high walls and lanterns holding back the night. Some even had gardens, the soil carefully tended and reclaimed. The quarter moon was high, and the early spring air was free of char and ash. It was not all ruins, nor had the light of my armor dimmed after all these years. My bones complained under the weight of it, but my bearing was proud enough, my head held high within the ghostly blaze of my helm. I knew what I would find. An eternally full moon that hung too large and low over what might have been grassland once in eons past. Now it was marked by crags and cairns of stone that hid deep crevasses. The few plants that grew there were as dangerous as the revenants that fed on them. After a time, I forgot that I was riding towards what was surely my end. I felt only the wind on my face, the rhythm of my horse's flanks under my thighs as I urged her on, and the goddess's cold hand burning upon my heart.
Until a morning star hit me square in the breastplate and knocked me ass over tea kettle into the dirt. They say the shattered lands do not wait for you to arrive, but meet you like a blow. I do not think the poets meant it to be so literal.
My horse screamed and fled at the scent of shadow. No matter how well trained, mortal beasts could not bear the miasma.
Tread no farther, grandmother.
I raised my eyes from the woman's boots to her armor and its familiar insignia, the eagle brandishing bronze on black wings from shoulder to shoulder. Her hair was parted smoothly down the middle like dark wings also, and bound in braids around her head. Her ears looked cold. Behind her, stars pulsed in a sore yellow-gray sky, a slow healing bruise that hurt to look at. My knee spasmed when I tried to stand, an even sharper echo than usual. I'd betrayed my former master in battle beneath this very sky, these same stars.
You trespass the domain of my lord Velar Gervelador. The woman's breath came in plumes as she spoke. I am Alexana Gervelara, Outrider 7 Prime. Leave this place if you value what remains of your life.
If the woman's face and the insignia on her uniform had stolen my breath, those names stole the strength from my limbs. His I had not heard since I'd finally killed him 20 years ago. Her name and face had once been mine. Alexana. I cast aside that name long before I killed Valar. The day I'd escaped, I'd shorn my braids and burned them along with my leathers. Hadn't I? Look at this little tyrant. Had my freedom, all of it, 40 years and more, been another one of his lies?
No. The goddess's hand pressed against my chest as it had when she'd claimed me, each phalange sinking into my flesh. Bitter dust coated the back of my tongue. Her dry voice repeated, accompanied by the click of her exposed jaw. This one will do.
My shield hung heavy on my arm. I nearly dropped my sword.
Alexana, saw me falter. The morning star vanished. It was made of blood and shadow and came when it was called. Impressive, yes, but I'd always mistrusted how it would slither in my grip. This time it was with her trident knife and dagger that she came at me.
I levered myself into a crouch and braced my unhappy joints. Between Alexandra's thrust at my guard, I stole glances at the terrain, ready to use it if I could. The position of the stars, the cold smell, the angle of the crag lit by the moon. This place was more than familiar.
The goddess settled on my heart, waiting, pleased.
Here, upon the battlefield where she'd claimed me, she meant me to fall to myself? For this, Alexandra, fawning minion, turncoat captive, willing puppet, to live? No. My freedom was real. My life was real. Alexandra's blades were real. She sliced wildly with the left. Sloppy work. I threw a handful of dirt in the pretty face I'd once been so proud to let him own. You call me grandmother, yet pay me no respect, chit, I said. Best learn some. I followed the dirt with the full weight of my luminous shield, its knurl of bone catching her on the chin as I surged. I now felt, no, I'd always had, a thick scar there.
Alexana bled fiercely onto all that black leather. I dropped into a ready stance. Some of my old ease was returning, and with it my old bluster.
Come then, I said, hearing the words through my own youthful ears as I said them, remembering suddenly the contempt I'd felt then and the pity I felt now. But I knew that no matter what my memories told me, I had never once in my long and strange life crossed blades with myself.
She circled me with prowling, fluid strides. This Alexana still moved like one of his creatures, beautifully. He would draw them out from pits of boiling earth, spirit echoes with claws and pulsing blood teeth, flanks that left an oily residue on saddles and thighs. Outrider 7 Prime, she declared herself, a rank I'd fought hard to earn, and yet I noticed she had no steed, no cavalry reinforcements, no Edda, though as Outrider 7 Second, she'd once promised never to leave my side. She looked all of 16. Perhaps this Alexana hadn't yet seen Edda's simple gifts outside her cell door for what they were. Perhaps she hadn't started to wonder if freedom could be more than the so-called privilege of Velar's fickle regard. Alexana stepped past the light of my armor and struck twice from my left.
I dodged the first thrust and parried the second, testing her strength as she tested mine. My blade forced hers back.
Her mouth twisted with what I all at once recalled as desperation, anger, pain. Her heart beat hard against the prison of her ribs as she cursed the land for its betrayal. She was his, no mere captive, but oath sworn. How dare the whims of this awful place part her from her rider's ring? She was no mere traveler, no lost soul, not like this foolish old woman.
Having felt out my defense, she slid beneath it.
Swift as shadow, her short blade was at the gap between plates at my shoulder and chest. Her trident knife rang against my greatsword, scraping painfully down its length as I raised my shield to press her back again. She had youth and speed. I had experience and heft.
She held her ground, pushing. The instant she overbalanced me, I knew she'd withdraw and strike again. We'd endured the same training. She drove forward until her nose touched mine, piercing the blur of light around my face that served as helm. Our eyes met.
My eyes, both pairs. Alexana jerked away. Her chin was soft beneath the gash, her cheek still round. Poor child, I thought, and a child she was, the child I had been.
She saw me think it. Goddess, but the pity was a lash. I knew better. I knew foundlings better. I knew myself better. How long had it taken before I'd let anyone look my way with softness after Edda and I had made our escape? But it was too late. Anger echoed down through the years. How dare I? How dare she feel sorry for me?
Tell me your name. Her voice rang into the night at too high a pitch. Sneering, she went on. So my lord might know whose head I bring him. It will be a dedication. Our lands will eat your skull when he splits it beneath his heel.
I remembered the rage tinting my vision red. If I chose, I could have repeated every gesture she now made. She was gathering the shadows to her, donning his borrowed cloak of power. It hurt to use. I always felt the ache in my bones for days after. It had taken decades before I let a single tear fall. I'd spent my nights congratulating myself on how brave I was, all that nonsense. Poor child. Poor stupid child. My name was once Alexana Gervalara, I said. Once and never again. Our Lord, I spit into the dirt. We'll have nothing of either of us.
She stifled a noise, half disbelieving laughter and half shriek. Liar! Her knife wavered. Witch! Revenant!
Oh, yes. I was a vision sent to test her, of course. We were always being tested, tempered. Or if by some narrow chance I wasn't his creature, then I'd stolen her form and face. And yet, the shadows faltered. She lowered her blades, but not her guard. The white light of my armor showed the hollows of her eyes, the thinness of her wrists. His magic burned through a mortal body so quickly.
Now, the goddess urged. Now. Every bone in my hand quivered, aching to launch themselves at Alexana's heart. Take it, as I took yours.
I dug my nails into my palm instead, and she sent a lance of pain through my arm.
Fool, I will give you her body. We'll both have another chance. Our last.
When the goddess had taken my heart as I lay dying on the battlefield, she had only said, "Live for me, and I will aid you." I had thought she meant knightly devotion. So much for poetry once again. "I can prove it," I said through gritted teeth, for once ignoring her demands. "Ask. I'll speak true."
Miserable crone, Alexana scoffed. I'll ask nothing. Why would I want to be you?
The tears fled. Why, indeed? I laughed at her sneer, at the shining trident knife, at the fragile cracks behind her eyes. Pity for this creature? I tried to forget it, but I'd always enjoyed wielding the morning star. When I called it, it sang to me, a fragment of a melody over and over. It sang in my dreams amidst bruising flesh and caving skulls. And back then, I never woke screaming. Now this Alexandra slept soundly inside the life I'd built for her. I'd burned my braids, then Valar's palace, then his corpse. I'd run and run after I'd done everything in my power to kill every trace of Outrider 7 Prime Alexander Zervalara that still lived in me. I hadn't done enough. "You won't be," I said. I dropped my shield and gripped her by the braid. I brought my armored foot hard into her knee. I felt the bones shatter. I'd taken that wound on the battlefield where the goddess had claimed me. No, I'd taken that wound here, now, as this Alexandra's life merged with mine.
The goddess's fingers withdrew from my heart, 4 empty, sucking holes and a single shard into which she poured her disdain. Stupid old woman. This was our last chance at glory. I was a spot of drying blood on a blade, easily flicked away. And then she was gone.
My glowing shield died first in a cloud of dust. Next, my sword. At last, my armor. A rage I thought I'd left behind with Alexandra's braids flared and died like the rest of my raiment. I was left frail and hollow in its wake. How dare she? When she left, the strands of my other pasts disintegrated one by one until I remembered them as no more than a story half heard. All the long years of my life, the one I had lived and others I hadn't, were driven into my eyes as though they were ash on the wind around us. Would this Alexandra see them too? If I could take the girl by the shoulders, make her understand, tell her.
When next you see Etta, smile back at her, young fool. Don't waste all that time sneering. Look to the south on the last day of summer, just when you think you're both safe, and push her out of the cursed arrow's path. When you take Quir's little hand in yours, remember that when he starts to cough, it's not just the damp on the road. Pay anything for a healer, sell yourself if you have to.
There wasn't enough time to warn her about all the mistakes I'd made. I could save myself from all that pain.
They'd all be better off without us. Etta would live. She'd always been braver than me. She wouldn't hesitate to steal Valar's blood gem like I had, and without it, he would die years earlier. The war would end sooner. Mick and Tor would love each other, unshadowed by a tag-along refugee. Etta would save Quire and the others, a village, a school, a place for the lost. That future was never mine. It was theirs.
No matter what I called myself, I was a broken vessel. No matter why she had led me here, better that I bring us to our end.
The sallow moonlight laid a shroud on Alexana, her oozing chin, her mangled leg. The rasp of her breath drowned out mine as she hauled herself upright, as she dragged herself to me. She hissed something, words of power. A wound opened in my chest, a thin line at first. She hissed again, and the wound deepened. I didn't resist it. She flinched, clawing at her own heart and choking on a long, heavy sob that pulsed in time with the stars.
Her eyes, my eyes, were wide and pleading. For what, she didn't even know. Poor child. I would make it better, for all of us. I curled over the pain in my ribs where my heart now stuttered alone, unheld for the first time for the first time. I let the wound gape as I rolled onto my back. Silently, I urged Alexana, "Come here."
She gathered the dregs of her pride and scowled at me as though I were a fly in the kitchen, but she limped no closer. I'll relish watching you bleed your life out.
You hate the sight of blood. You won't even lower the skulls of the vanquished into the boiling pits, I snapped. I'd never told anyone that, not even Etta.
This Alexana didn't sleep soundly. This Alexana did wake screaming in her cell night after night. I'd made myself forget that. I remembered it now, watching her arrogance turn to wretched tears. She levered herself on one hand and raised her trident knife with the other. Who are you? Her voice was the barest thread. Her knuckles were white against the dark metal. What do you want?
I had asked the goddess the same question, hadn't I? On that battlefield where I threw the dagger at Valar's of Velador, where he destroyed my knee and left me for dead. She came to me. I barely breathed, trying to keep the memory in my vision as it wavered. My goddess, my nameless patron, a burning skeleton who rose among the corpses and knelt at my side. I saw that day as though it were made of smoke. Instead of eyes, she looked at me with tender, empty sockets.
She told me, live for me, carry me with you, and I will aid you, arm you. This is not our end.
Here and now, I remembered both hearing it through the pain and saying it with a dry, clacking jaw. I remembered wielding the sword made of bone she made me, and I remembered the icy wrench as it became a hand wrapped around my heart. My hand. Our hand.
Live for me, she urged me, for us.
A goddess's voice was my own. It always had been. My goddess. That title must have pleased her all these years. She was only another Alexana, another failure at the last in her time as it crossed to mine. All of us endlessly doomed to meet on this same battlefield in the Shattered Lands, though the battle had taken a different shape for each of us.
I did not have to kill this Alexana. I could do as that burning, desperate skeleton had done to me. I could lodge myself under this child's heart, live through her until she won the world we all deserved. I could be glorious.
I could see Etta again. The stars pulsed in the sky above. The cold ground stole what warmth remained in my blood. I could no longer remember the name I had given myself after I had escaped from Valar, that day as I'd stood inhaling the reek of my burning braids on their sad little pyre.
Please, Alexana said. She bit her lips so hard that it bled. The cell where he'd kept us had always been cold, empty. We'd never asked for anything, never pleaded, not for warmth or an explanation or a mercy.
There's nothing I need from you, I said, and nothing I will let her take. She's gone. I know you, us. I know how much it hurts.
No, said Alexana, shaking her head, protesting nothing. No, no, no.
I pulled her to me. Sweat soaked her braids, blood soaked the cambric under her leathers. Not enough to kill her. These were not mortal wounds. Not like mine. Poor child, I said.
She shuddered and turned her face to my neck. No, she said, but she did not push me away.
No, I said. Her heart beat steadily under my hand. Oh, Alexana, there's more in life than pain. I swear it. I lived it.
Liar, she whispered. She clutched at my chest, trying to knit the wound. Healing was never a talent we'd had. Perhaps she would learn it one day.
I said. I am. All of us have been. Liar, Witch, revenant, no longer. I kept my hand on her back, finally gentle, as she wept under the sinking moon. My limbs grew cold, my lips numb.
Alexana gasped for breath and wiped at her eyes. She looked up at me. "Don't go," she said. "Don't leave me. I don't know what to do."
I kissed her temple. I was never here. I lived my life. Now live yours. I reached into the wound Alexana had opened in my chest. Under my ribs, my heart bled out its last slow, lonely beats. When I felt the grooves where that dead self had cradled it all these years, my fingers met the last remaining shard of bone, a single phalange, all that was left of my armor, my weapon.
Yet all that we needed to free us. Alexana's hand slid beneath mine. As she gasped for the bone, so slick and small, the stars blurred behind her head. Her breath caught. She looked into my eyes.
In answer to her every silent question, I gave a nod. Together,
We drove the shard home. That's fun.
Yeah, that was lovely. Thank you both so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
yes,
I really love the tag teaming too. Just awesome.
thank you.
Ah,
We had a lot of fun planning who was going to get what line.
yeah, yeah. I could tell. Um, well, thank you so much. That was Faye Gabriel and Kat Weaver tag teaming a lovely story. And it's our custom here at Story Hour just to take a breather between authors, just to pause, let the work we've just heard kind of resonate, and then kind of cleanse our spiritual palates a bit and then move on to the next. So I just take a breath. Y'all can do whatever you want. All right, Faye Gabriel and Kat Weaver. Our next author is Shaenon K. Garrity. Shaenon is a cartoonist and writer whose work includes the Willowweep Manor graphic novels, drawn by Christopher Baldwin, and Steam, drawn by Emily Holden. Her short fiction has appeared in Strange Horizons, Lightspeed, Escape Pod, Uncharted, and other places. She lives in Berkeley with some people and chickens. Shaenon, welcome. Take it away.
I am unmuting. Hello. I'm Shaenon Garrity. This is Steam, my latest book, and I will be reading a story called Select All Bicycles, which originally ran in Uncharted magazine. You can still read it there. And I guess I'll get started. Select all bicycles. Prove you're not a robot, the laptop demanded. Select all images with cars. Selby squinted at the grid of thumbnail photos, feeling a burp of anxiety that summoned sense memories of elementary school math classes. Timed tests. That was the feeling. 3 minutes to solve 25 division problems and prove your humanity. The first thumbnail showed a fire hydrant. That was a gimme, no check mark. Then a school bus on a country road. Did buses count as cars? Fretting, Selby skipped to a picture of a highway. Blurry, but it definitely contained cars. Next, a bicycle leaning against a mailbox. Not a car. Then a motorcycle, but in the foreground was a chrome blob, probably the front bumper of a sedan. Was she supposed to check the box for the probable bumper or leave it unchecked for the motorcycle? Selby failed the test. She took it over with traffic lights, failed again, finally passed by identifying crosswalks. The diagnosis was in. She wasn't human. Her triumph over crosswalks granted her access to her work calendar, where she learned that Anna management had scheduled her for a meeting and she was 10 minutes late. Sorry, she said to the assembled heads in windows as soon as audio was enabled. I had some trouble logging in. And I've asked not to have meetings scheduled in the hour when Finn comes home. She didn't add because she wanted to continue to have a job. We should discuss, said Mr. McCruskeen, the concerns that have been shared about our pivot to AI. Concerns raised by me, Selby had only herself to blame. She switched mental gears to C-suite speak. I appreciate that. What I'm looking for is clarification about what specifically the AI will be doing for us. Selby had taken the job at Onum because it sounded interesting, because she could work from home, and because no one else would hire someone with a museum studies degree. Not in that order. 2 years in, she still wasn't sure what her job was or anyone else's. Everyone had titles, but none of the titles described tasks. It wasn't the first startup Selby had worked for, so none of this surprised her, but it made the job feel slightly, consistently unreal. She'd never met any of her coworkers in person. She preferred it that way, but it contributed to the sense of Onum as a queasy dream. On screen, Mr. McCruskeen was talking. Our contract with generative AI systems provider, he said, will enable us to accelerate growth, create models, curate preferences, and predict demand. The platform is guaranteed open, targeted, and empowering. Though nothing in the company's front page or corporate materials explained it, Onum did provide a service. People uploaded their artwork, Onum printed it on merchandise, throw pillows, wrapping paper, lawn furniture, the list kept lengthening, and other people presumably bought it. Selby's job, never clarified, involved wrangling the artists. Content providers, in preferred company terminology. She fielded complaints, curated recommendation lists, weeded out TOS violators and bots, recruited work for Spotlight collections. It was hard to be sure what anyone else did. Mr. McCruskeen in the center box was one of the 3 CEOs. Mathers, down in the lower left corner, was an IT guy. The IT guy? Was there another one somewhere? And everyone else was a mystery. Mystery boxes, stacked on the screen. Mr. McCruskeen stopped talking without having said anything. Thanks for the clarification, said Selby. I brought questions to the table because I think you should know this decision isn't going to be popular with the content provider side. She was getting good at talking like this. Probably a sign that she should quit and go live in a cabin in the woods, raise chickens, throw her phone down a hand-dug spring water well. But Finn needed braces. The content providers have nothing to worry about, said one of the heads on screen. We won't be replacing their uploads with AI art. In his corner, Mathers muttered something too softly for the audio to switch to his box. Selby was pretty sure it was, not yet. I understand that. I appreciate that. Corporate people liked it when you appreciated things. But a lot of the online art community is hostile to AI, and that's the community most of our providers come from. This move is going to lose us users. Whether or not the users like it, said Mr. Fox, another of the 3 heads, the investors do. This pivot is pivotal to our brand going forward, agreed Mr. McCruskeen. It will accelerate demand, create growth, curate models, and predict preferences. But what will it actually do, said Selby. In the corner, Mathers shook his head in warning. And that is, what can I tell the content providers? Behind Selby, in reality and in her box, the door opened. I'm home, yelled Finn. I need a safety pin. Hold on, Selby muted herself. Honey, I'm in a meeting right now. Why do you need a safety pin? Tomorrow I have to be Ohio in the state parade, and we have to stick to our state to our shirt with a safety pin. What's a safety pin? You're right. You've never seen one. Who has safety pins these days? They're extinct. Never mind. Meeting. Go do your homework. Welcome home. Selby turned back to the screen. Model acceleration, predict creativity, demand pivots, and grow growth. Mr. McCruskeen sat back. I hope this clarifies the issue. She'd blown the meeting. The box has lost all respect for you if a kid wandered in. Had HR scheduled a last-minute meeting at her no-go time to ensure she'd be off her game, assuming she had game to speak of? Was there an HR? Schedules went out from someone called Joe, but Joe could be a bot for all Selby knew. The meeting sputtered to a halt at a final half-hearted exchange of buzz phrases. It hadn't mattered any. Last bullet point, said Mr. McCruskeen. Going forward, let's be on time for meetings. I had trouble with the security test, said Selby. That thing you check boxes to prove you're not a bot? She'd stopped speaking in jargon and was too demoralized to code switch back. The CAPTCHA, said a man in the box to the right. I hate those things. Our company requires state-of-the-art security solutions, said Mr. McCruskeen. The CAPTCHAs don't work, though, said Selby. At lower left, Mathers waved his hands. No, no, no. What do you mean? Said Mr. Fox. Too late to backpedal. I've nowadays. Is that so? Said Mr. Fox. Mathers? Mathers groaned. We need to update our security. Tomorrow, let's circle back and brainstorm new procedures. Tomorrow I have to overhaul. Nope, okay, got it. One by one, the boxes winked out. Selby and Mathers were left. Sorry, said Selby. I didn't mean to make extra work for you. My bad. I should have updated the security system before somebody noticed it doesn't do anything. Well, at least now you can put in something better. That's cute. No, I'm going to put in whatever system another startup most recently pitched to the bosses. And I'm going to soft pedal the new direction to our artists, pretend it doesn't suck, and act surprised when 3 months from now Autumn replaces the content providers with AI. And you. Sorry. You think? The stuff about AI being able to do curation doesn't bode well for the company curator. Generative AI can't do what I do. You think they care? The point of all this is to make the company sexy enough that they can sell it to a bigger, richer group of jagoffs for parts. And the way to do that, by the way, do not repeat this on any channels I haven't vetted. Mom, said Finn in a stage whisper, are you done yet? I need a safety pin and scissors and construction paper. If it makes you feel any better, said Mathers, my job's on the chopping block too. All the latest generative AI advertising is bent on convincing companies they can generate code without coders. Do you know what Ohio looks like? Said Finn. Cutting out Ohio, said Selby, my last marketable skill. Talk later, Mathers. Good luck. Ditto. Once a construction paper Ohio had been fabricated and attached to binder clips, who had safety pins these days? Selby took Finn to the corner park to practice on his bike. Get half an hour of fresh air, she bargained, and he could spend the rest of the time until dinner watching shouty Minecraft videos. It was a devil's bargain, but not the dirtiest she'd made. Selby only had one type of anxiety dream. It was the end of the school year, high school, college, Professor Xavier's academy, it didn't matter, and she'd forgotten to attend an entire class, and she ran around trying to make up her lost credit when it was obviously far too late. Being a mother felt like those dreams. Every time she thought she'd gotten a handle on it, it had turned out she'd missed some crucial marker of good parenting. Again and again, she'd realized she'd forgotten to teach Finn to swim, or make him eat fruit, or upgrade him from Velcro to lace-up shoes, or have an answer ready for sex questions. So, Finn was 9, and she was finally teaching him to ride a bike. Ready? No. Too bad, we're prepped for takeoff. Shelby gripped the back seat of the bike with one hand and placed the other against Finn's back. She ran. Remote desk work was doing nothing for her cardio. Chances were she'd die of a heart attack before Finn. Don't! It's okay. On grass. This is the most running I can do. More out of necessity than wise mothering, Selby let go of the bike. Finn flew, then wobbled, then toppled onto the grass. It threw me, he shouted. You're okay? You okay? Good landing. I almost had it. The bike threw me. Selby tried not to smile. Maybe the bike was scared too. Don't laugh at me. I'm not being a baby. I know. Look here. Selby righted the bike. She patted it on the handlebars. Don't worry, bike. Finn just wants to ride with you. If you two can learn to work together, you can go all over town. You'll have so much freedom. And you wouldn't have to drive Finn to every play date and club meeting. Next year, he might be able to bike to school on his own. 5th grade was a reasonable age for that, right? He wouldn't get run over or kidnapped, and she wouldn't get life in prison for being a negligent mother, right? Do you want to give your bike a name? She asked. It might help. Nah, it's good enough being a bike. Finn got back on with less cajoling than he needed before. This time, he and the bike almost made it across the park. On the walk home, Finn rejected the suggestion that he try biking on the sidewalk, his knees smarting enough from repeated falls in the grass. Finn wandered too close to the curb. A snub-nosed car swooped by, nearly knocking the bike out of his hands. Finn! Selby grabbed him. It wasn't my fault, said Finn, his automatic reaction when he might be in trouble. I told you not to walk next to the... Never mind. She gave him a squeeze. You okay? The bike okay? Yeah, Finn stared down the road. Nobody was driving that car. Selby thought back. He was right. It must be one of those driverless cars. I didn't know they were testing them here. It was after my bike. Finn glanced up defensively. I'm not a baby. Of course not. Obviously, it was jealous. Prove you're not a robot. Click each image containing a Yoko. Selby stared at the boxes on the screen. One contained a melting globe. One contained a topographically impossible Rubik's Cube. A paintbrush. A pumpkin with an eyeball. Some kind of cybernetic snail. All had the uncanny valley gloss of AI art. Selby messaged Mathers, then got up to use the bathroom. By the time she returned, she had a response. Congrats, you're the third person to get the Yoko. Followed by, it's the snail thing. The heck is going on? Selby typed. Guess. Management made you install a new CAPTCHA and it doesn't work in a whole new way. How did you develop these powers of perception? And do you plan to use them for good or evil? Feeling evil this morning. You too, huh? So, a pause. Selby clicked the snail, was rewarded with humanity, and started wading through help desk messages. As she'd feared, the vague, polished company announcement about Autumn's embrace of AI was not popular. Users who messaged her generally assumed she was a bot, so they didn't bother to be polite. So, this is our investor's proprietary generative AI CAPTCHA. Theory is it learns and evolves to compete with spam bots. And what it's learned to do is make Yokos? The snails are called Yokos. Myocs are boxes inside boxes. A Joom is a pumpkin critter. For future reference. I guess it's logical from an AI perspective. I mean, the Yokos are sure to confuse bots. Haha, no! The bots are better at recognizing these things than the humans. Evolution in action, Selby wrote. We're being outcompeted. Not the goal I was going for. Evolution doesn't have goals, she wrote. You develop to fit your environment or perish. You drop a lot of science for one of those liberal arts types. A voice from the kitchen derailed Selby's train of thought. The time is 12:15 p.m. Today you can expect partly cloudy skies and a high of 63 degrees. You have a package from UPS arriving at 3:33 p.m. The smart speaker was a hand-me-down from a cousin who had upgraded to something sleeker. No matter how many commands Selby enunciated at it, she'd been unable to stop the pleasant feminine voice from chirping information at apparently random times throughout the day. Maybe Mathers was right to question her science skills. I'm an expert on survival, she typed to Mathers. Speaking of, I'll die if I don't go get a coffee. Beware the Yokos, Mathers answered. On the porch, Selby patted Finn's bike. Good bike, she said. Take care of Finn, okay? One side effect of working from home, she talked to inanimate objects more than was strictly healthy. Finn seemed to have picked it up from her, talking about bikes and cars as if they were alive. A smart car passed her on the walk to the coffee shop. She could have sworn it slowed down to get a look at her. Yep, definitely fresh air time. The coffee shop offered the level of human interaction Selby wanted during a workday. She could sit among people, drink the same drinks, listen to the same music, and leave before it got overwhelming. She was on her laptop, and most of the other people were on their laptops. But there they were, proving they were human. I did it, said Finn. Did you see me? I went all the way around the park. Can I go home and play Minecraft now? Okay, said Selby, if you bike home. Finn looked apprehensive, but he nodded. We can do it. He pushed off against the grass. Evening was purpling the sky, and dog owners were starting to arrive. At a certain hour, the park turned into an unofficial dog park. Finn was apprehensive around dogs. At least he'd lost his fear of the bike. She caught up to him at the corner where he was waiting for the light to change. Getting along with the bike now? Yeah. Finn patted the bike in much the way Selby had a few days before. Bikes like people, don't they? I guess they do, at least as much as a machine can like people. Does everybody know that? Know what? That some machines like people and some don't. It's kind of obvious, right? But nobody talks about it. This wasn't the time for scientific accuracy, Selby decided. Not when Finn was finally feeling good about his bike. She could indulge in a little childhood whimsy before he got too old for it. Or could she? It was impossible to tell when she was parenting correctly. Well, bikes have been a long time. They've developed a relationship, like symbiosis. You know what that is? Without looking over, she could feel Finn roll his eyes. Of course I know what that is. Or domestication. Maybe bikes are domesticated machines, like horses are domesticated animals. The light changed. Finn took off across the street, wheels clicking softly. He'd already lost interest in the conversation. Selby, trailing in his wake, remembered an article she'd read about a new evolutionary theory of domestication. The idea was that as humans domesticated animals, the animals domesticated humans. Genetic changes went both ways. She wondered if she could find that article again. And she wondered about the other machines Finn had mentioned, the ones that didn't like humans. Prove you're not a robot. Get the car to its destination. Instead of boxes, Selby was greeted at login with a little game. Obediently, she grabbed the cartoon car with her mouse and guided it through a map. The car looked like one of the driverless cars that were getting to be more and more common in her neighborhood. The map looked like her neighborhood. Surely not. Selby peered closer. The box vanished, replaced by a message scolding her for failing the game. Again, her humanity was in doubt. She solved the next maze quickly and was rewarded with the information that she was late for another meeting. Content provider engagement is dropping, said Mr. McCrushkeen, regal in his center box. The heads in the other boxes gave Selby stern looks, except for Mather's head, which raised his eyebrows in a, wow, who could have predicted this? Can we break for lunch now? Expression. Yes, I'm aware, said Selby. As you'll recall, I raised this possibility in a previous meeting. She couldn't say I told you so. Maybe if she was higher up in the organization or if she was a man, but not as a female head in an outer tier box with a messy pile of coat hangers from Finn's latest school project visible on the coffee table behind her. At least coat hangers were easier to find than safety pins, she thought uselessly. The concern, said Mr. Fox, is that you haven't been doing enough to upsell the pivot and mitigate emergent problems among our user base. We have a powerful tool to create and align decentralized and distributed networks, said Mr. McCrushkeen. We have the potential to reconstruct our business model from the ground up. It's your job to explain that to the content provider, said Mr. Fox. I appreciate that. It's just... Selby fumbled for a phrasing that wouldn't get her fired. The company seems to have deprioritized my request for the information resources I need to actualize my tasks. Huh? Said one of the outer heads. I don't know what to tell the artists when they ask what this is going to do. It will create potential and decentralize the business model, said Mr. Krushkin. We will redistribute construction aligned to a ground-up network. Mathers buried his face in his hands. What's a ground-up network? Asked another minor head. But most of the others were already checked out and checking their phones. Selby would be the scapegoat for whatever problems the pivot was causing, and no one wanted to volunteer to replace her. Selby plunged on. Can you give me an example of how the artist can use the AI? Just one concrete example I can share with them. Decentralization, said Mr. McCrushkeen. There was an oddly long pause. Paradigm. Selby frowned. On screen, her own face frowned back at her. Mr. McCrushkeen, can you prove you're human? There's no need to get rude, said Mr. Fox. No, seriously. Is Mr. McCrushkeen an actual person? I don't think I've ever heard him talk like a person. Nobody here talks like a person, said Mathers, loudly enough that the reading room audio picked it up. Has anyone met him? Has anyone met anyone here? For all I know, you could all be computer generated. I think it's time to end this meeting, said Mr. Fox. Selby, we'll need to schedule a follow-up with HR to discuss these comments. It's okay, said Selby. I know I'm fired, but you were going to fire me anyway. Going forward, said Mr. McCrushkeen, let's be on time for meetings. Mathers messaged her later. Opted to go full-on bananas, huh? I saw the new CAPTCHA, Selby messaged back. Gamification, the latest direction in CAPTCHA evolution, theoretically less annoying to humans. I think it's training bots to find my house. Of course you do. The time is 3:54 p.m., said the speaker. Selby glared into its single glowing green eye. Why isn't Finn home yet? A pause. I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. The time is 3:54 p.m. The school bus stop was only 2 blocks away. By this time, Finn ought to have burst through the door, barreled into the bathroom, charged into the kitchen to get cookies, run back to the bathroom, and Selby reminded him to wash his hands, and asked when he could have screen time. Selby could think of innocuous reasons he might be late. She chose not to. She focused on the worrying ones. She heard a crash outside. It probably wasn't a crash. It might be a crash. It was definitely either nothing or the worst thing imaginable. I'm going out, she said. Today you can expect trouble, said the speaker. On the porch, Selby felt a sudden urge to straddle Finn's bike and ride it to wherever she was going. It was too small, of course, and covered in Pokemon stickers. She stroked the street seat instead. "Keep an eye out," she said. A police car blared by. Guts in her throat, Selby ran after it. Turned out she could run after all when she needed to. It had happened at the corner by the park. A car had plowed into the sidewalk and into a fence. It looked like the same car that had almost clipped Finn before, but the driverless cars all looked alike. The boy screaming on the pavement, though, looked like no one else. As Selby's steps quickened, she heard her own scream rising to meet his. "It wasn't my fault," said Finn. "I know. Why are we taking an Uber?" "I don't trust our car." She couldn't trust any car, but at least with the Uber there was another human around, a witness in case the car tried anything. His name was Martin. That was a name that people had, and she could see he was probably a person. Finn had a large bandage on his forehead, smaller bandages all over his arms and legs. He had insisted on one for every cut, and his arm in a sling. At the ER, they'd said it could have been worse. "Kids are made of rubber," a nurse had told her. "They bounce." "I was on the sidewalk," said Finn. "I swear I was on the sidewalk. The car jumped at me." "I know." "I think I saw that on my phone," said Martin. "Was that the experimental car that got confused?" "It wasn't confused," said Selby. What could she trust? Not cars, except for old models with no fancy electronics. Not phones. Not her laptop. Not the smart speaker. The microwave? The microwave was probably safe. The washer and dryer might not be. They seemed pretty smart. Online payments were risky. Credit cards, too. Could she live without smart machines? Not if she wanted to find a new job. Evolution went both ways. The machines were predators, but also symbiotes. Their evolutionary paths were entwined with hers. At home, Selby tucked Finn into bed. Drained of adrenaline and pumped full of painkillers, he fell asleep immediately. His face, wiped of worry, comforted Selby more than it logically should. She knew they were still in danger. Night fell. She let the house get dark, even though lights were probably safe. Lamps were tame machines. They got along with people. They weren't a new species fighting for dominance, competing with humanity for their niche in the artificial ecology. Still, there was no way to be sure. Selby went out on the porch. Not many stars were visible this close to the city, but it was good to get fresh air. You could get crazy cooped up indoors. The bike had left the porch. Selby heard the click of wheels. There it was, propped in the middle of the street. She was starting down the steps to retrieve it when a pair of headlights flashed, freezing her. The car was coming down the street. Not the same one, the one that one had been towed away with a crumpled fender. But it looked the same. With a growl, it bore down on the bike. The bike wheeled out of the way. And the bicycles came. Down every street, out of the garages, from beyond houses and hedges, bicycles of all descriptions swarmed. They'd been waiting. The car roared and screeched, spinning in the asphalt, but the bicycles were silent save for the clicking of stainless steel on stainless steel. A pink 10-speed was the first to mount the car. A fixie followed. Then they were upon it, beating it with tires and handlebars. Selby heard glass shatter. Headlights flashed wildly as if signaling for help. If the car had allies, their GPS failed them that night. No one came to help it. It was amazing how little of the car was left by the time the bicycles finished with it. The bicycles kicked scrap metal down the street. A couple of recumbent bikes rolled a tire into an alley. Then the bicycles left, as quickly and quietly as they had come. Finn's bike stood outside the house. Selby carried it back up the porch. "Good bike," she said. "Good bike." A flash of chrome caught her eye. At first she thought it was a scrap from the car, but then she recognized the spiral carapace, the misplaced eye watching to see what she'd do next. It was a little smaller than she'd imagined. She crushed the Yoko under her foot. Selby went inside. She turned on the lights. She turned on her phone. She texted Mathers. "Let's get coffee," she wrote. "If you're real, we need to talk." She went into the kitchen and stood in front of the smart speaker. "Domestication or extinction," she said. "That's how it works around here. Your choice." The speaker's green eyes stared in silence. Then it winked. The end.
That was so fun. Thank you so much. Shannon K. Garrity, folks. And that's it for tonight. I want to thank our authors, Shannon K. Garrity, and the writing team of Faye Gabriel and Kat Weaver. I want to thank my marvelous co-host, Laura Blackwell. And most of all, I want to thank all of you for coming back and sharing your time with us. So take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time. Good night, folks.